On this episode of Humans of VanLife, you're here with Neal the Earthling.
I'm so glad you're here. Do you want to read us your poem?
Oh yeah, thanks for asking. So I wrote this poem a little while back called This Life of Mine. When we stop time, it's easy to shine. This life of mine, I'll let it shine. Don't ease the pain, don't let it rain, don't go insane inside your brain. Staring at a sign, this life of mine, oh, everything feels so fine. This van life of mine is no crime, just benign, forgotten was time. Shining bright, shining light, oh, everything seems so right. This life of mine, I'll let it shine, 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 I'll let it shine. A fire pit, filled with grit, lit, a perfect fit. New morning dew, birds anew, creek flow, aglow. Staring up, big sky above, liquid gray with quilted blue. Earth, wind, water, fire, who's the true liar? Helping hands over land, sharing, caring, hearing. Intertwined, stretched to the core, our stories full of glory. Amor, love, shining bright, shining light. Oh, everything seems so right. Climbing mountains in dreams tonight, lost in flight, it's alright. Shining bright, shining light, oh, everything seems so right. This life of mine, this van life of mine, it ain't no crime, just benign, forgotten was time, this van life of mine.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a perfect way to start this episode number 20. That's so exciting. Do you know that? Greetings. Oh, I'm so glad we finally got the chance to sit down, Neal. Are you happy to be here?
I am. I'm glad we got to sit down too.
Good.
I've been listening to your podcast for, I think now 2 days.
Awesome.
I got through the episode with Austin, the man who lives in a fire truck from Germany, plays a mean guitar, and he always brings the good vibes. I actually got to know him back in October in Bend, so it was really cool to hear his story as told like as well as you got him to tell it, and in as much detail. It's really beautiful. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I would love to just start off with maybe sharing a little bit about, actually, you know what? People have been asking me at the beginning of my podcast to share a little update of where I am and what's going on. And
where are you?
We are just out of Basalt. We're in currently a trailhead parking lot. This is still the aftermath of the VanLife Diaries. We're still all together.
There's a meadow of sunflowers, 2 snow-capped mountain peaks.
Beautiful.
Last night there was those thunderstorms and lightning with the satellite that we just saw going over as the full moon was rising. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
That was out of this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we still have about 8 vans here of people still gathering, doing some communal dinners. You guys were drinking champagne last night.
Not me.
Not you. Everybody else was?
Everybody else. Actually, 2 days ago we saw that rainbow too. This spot's been really epic. You go to a quarter mile down and there's a lake we've been able to swim in, and a 4-mile hike that none of us have really done yet, but it leads to another lake. Just a little bit more work.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's a very special place, and I'm really glad to be here with the people that are still here. So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about how long you've been living in your van for?
I've been living in my van for a year and about 9 months. I bought it in October 2017. I think the year is correct. You kind of lose track of time in the van, but it's been about a year and 9 months, and I quit my corporate job actually last July. So it was the July 4th weekend. I went to Big Sur, and I had this life epiphany. Everything just lined up. The universe was all in place, and I went in that Monday and quit. So it's been a little over a year since since that moment where I've just been on the road.
What was it in Big Sur that like stimulated this epiphany? Was it just like the right place, right time, or like what do you think it was that helped facilitate this epiphany to quit your job and come out here?
Well, so leading up to that trip, my brother had asked me if I want to launch this online magazine called Vanny Ain't No Joke. He gave me an outlet, something other than just the work I had been doing for 5 years. Doing product management and design in the corporate world, switching over to marketing the last year. He just gave me like a project of I could call my own. And so I had to plan a vacation to Big Sur with this other guy that lived in a van. He brought a girl along.
that's really unfortunate.
Well, actually, unfortunately, like I had a goal on which I wanted to save up a certain amount, and it aligned with that moment. I could go way back to my story before, but I'll stick to the Big Sur trip now, and really what the breaking point was, because we went on this trip and we were in Big Sur. I was with my friend, and there was just this night, and he was just so rude. I was making dinner, but it was late. We were parked off a cliff. It was beautiful, like a beautiful sunset. But I guess he wasn't getting along well with the girl, so that stress was blowing over to me. And he didn't appreciate the dinner, and so I just like drove off literally that night, like after dinner, and just like parked on my own. I saw the stars. I saw the Milky Way out in Big Sur, like over the ocean. It was the most beautiful night stars I've ever seen in my life. And I was just like, I'm looking up here, I'm all alone. I was kind of alone before too. I just was around really bad energy, and that reminded me of work. Like literally I'm like on vacation, but I'm around the same type of negative energy. And I had a lot of time. I'm just staring at the stars, pondering in my thoughts. There's a lot of emotion. I wasn't really writing back then, so I was really just thinking before I ever wrote anything, like in terms of poetry. And so I'm just thinking and thinking and thinking, and the next day I woke up, I drove into the mountains and the hills, and all these thoughts still on my mind. I'm like, man, the fear of working one more day in the corporate world and experiencing that energy, that fear was more overwhelming than anything else. And so so I just couldn't do one more day. I mean, it scared me more to do what I had like grown to hate and had been my biggest fear my whole life, being a robot, because what the CEO put me on work-wise at the end of my time there, he knew I was leaving, so he didn't want me to have anything important, and he just put me on website development and basically like doing this nonsensical repetitive work. So I went from doing all this development and design, launching all these apps, managing a team of 6, to basically at the end not being able to work remote anymore, which I had been able to do when I was first doing that work, because I was managing a marketing department, to basically just doing brain dead work. Like the exact fear I had my whole life was just being a robot. I'm like, whatever I could do to avoid being a robot. It's not a sustainable life to do that. Your brain just dies.
So you did this job for 5 years. I'm curious, how did you last 5 years in it? Like, did it take you stepping away to Big Sur for you to realize, like, whoa, this is some negative energy? Or, like, what was it that allowed you to stay in that job?
Well, at first it was like, at first it was the most exciting thing ever for me. I graduated from college. I didn't have a job. I majored in business administration and management. I concentrated on entrepreneurship because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm just like, well, if I get to pick this class and this class and like get to learn a lot, it's going to suit me better than just pinning myself down one path. Like I want to be able to branch out and do whatever. I minored in economics, which was my original major. I didn't have a major for the first 2 years of college, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the first year out of college, I just took this crummy job that was like not even full-time, doing more building sales funnels for a overblown software that was really hard to use. Like it was it was hard to sell something that you couldn't really really like simplify it in terms of what its purpose was. Like, the guy had some good sales, like some big school districts. It was like, I mean, but it just wasn't going to go anywhere beyond that, and it was obvious. So when I got the opportunity for this job, it was exciting because they had McDonald's as clients, they had Taco Bell, Chipotle, they had all these big clients, and they proved something more so than where I was at, and I had an opportunity to go be a consultant there and work with all these big clients. So it was really exciting to me. I got to work under people that had been working in the force, like in that company for 10 years, had a lot of knowledge to share, and I was learning something new every day. And contrary to entrepreneurship is basically exactly what I went to like school for. Somehow it like just fell in my lap. The day I gave in my resignation letter for that part-time job, I got a call for that company.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So were you as like I've known you now for, oh dear, when did we meet?
We met July 4th in Buena Vista.
Aww.
Or July 3rd.
Nice. Good memory. Okay. So for about 3 weeks now. And I view you as a very creative, a passionate person. Were you this creative when you were working the corporate world? Or is it just since coming out here and like practicing your writing and your poetry that this is all coming to fruition?
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question, but I have a great answer because I've thought about it, being on my own for so long, and honestly just experiencing things in such a drastic way. Every time I try to do anything, I try to put my best in, so I'm completely there, and I'm putting in 100%. And in the first year at my job, actually, I got to go to India.
Wow.
Because the CEO decided to launch this whole new side of the business to target small to medium-sized businesses. Basically, what that enterprise software was for these big clients like McDonald's. He's going to develop apps for them. So I had the opportunity to basically go on that, go to India, like work with these developers, and actually get to like show my creativity. He had asked us to design sales presentations, and so I designed a whole new style to sell all of our products basically through PowerPoint. In like second grade, I got to learn how to use PowerPoint, and we had to do stop animation. So I was like, the CEO basically was like, I want like this. Basically, salespeople can't do shit. Like, they don't know what they're doing. So like, I need a script, like a story. And I need it to be like on point. They can't go off script. Right. So I basically had the opportunity to write stories for the products, and I didn't necessarily have to spend my time going out to the clients to sell, but I basically they were like the actors in the movie we were writing, and I decided to do that stop animation style for the products. So you got to like have just press the clicker and the mouse would go, and like it looked like you were in the product and actually using it.
So that was creative for you.
That was pretty damn creative.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it was a fun project because like they thought I was crazy actually when I proposed that idea, and like he gave everybody. There's like 3 people in the department at the time, and he gave everybody a chance to do it their own way. And
so what about this writing then? I'm just so curious, like when this was stimulated. Because like everybody I talk to around here just thinks you're a poet. Well, we love your words and we appreciate them.
I'm a poet and I didn't even know it.
And so where did that come from?
Well, as I was just telling you, I was writing stories for products. So my writing really took off in the corporate world, and I think that's as much as like I grew to hate it and agreed, and like the CEO wanting to use me for his end means just to put money in his pocket, what I learned was so valuable to actually writing now. It's just a different outlet of writing, and it's a more creative outlet of writing because there's no boundaries. And that's, I think, being trapped in the corporate world for so long, I just want to break free and like express myself and not be tied to any restraints. And so poetry, it's a free-flowing form of art, and that's why I've been so drawn to it, and I think it's connected with me in such a way where it just comes off naturally. That's what people hear, I believe.
I like this idea of no boundaries. Like, that just reminds me of your van and how you painted it.
Yeah.
Like that. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I feel like that's so, like, that's really important and that's very, really you.
That was the start of expressing myself. I quit
Mm.
my corporate job, and at first, my brother's old van, he had a Dodge Ram and it was painted camouflage. He had these palm tree patterns. And so the first thing after quitting my corporate job, I'm thinking to myself, I don't need to hide anymore. You've been hiding for your whole life. You bought the van, you lived in it for 8 months while working a corporate job, and it's just this white old beat up thing, nothing inspiring, just that same drum beat where you're on the inside but you're hiding, and you're not showing your true self or your full self. So when I quit and I had the opportunity to not have to park stealth anymore, I just was thinking to myself, I want to paint that van. And that's really how it started, just bringing myself to the surface and having something to walk back to every day where I feel inspired, and it never stops. And so now I've started to do artwork on the inside too, because why stop on the outside when there's more room to grow?
Totally. So before the corporate world, did you feel like you had to stay in within those boundaries before the corporate world even? Like, what's been your experience with, like, now I see you as somebody who is not afraid to fully be themselves, and whatever way that looks like. Like, you're not afraid to be different. You're not afraid to stand out. Matter of fact, you love that and you seek that, and I really value that in you, because I think that that's something I've kind of naturally done, was stand out. But it's really cool to see somebody like stoked to stand out, if that makes sense. But I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, before the corporate world, did you have troubles showing up as like your wild self?
Honestly, I just didn't, like, before the corporate world, I just don't think I showed up.
Mm.
An imprint of me showed up, but it wasn't me. It was just more of a reflection than anything else of what others had imprinted onto me. And I was really hiding in my own head. I've been pretty much solo my whole life. Like, I've had like short relationships here and there, but nothing serious. And I haven't had anything serious because I just haven't felt a true connection. Maybe because at the end of the day, I wasn't truly connected with myself, and I felt that disconnection. So it was hard to be present with a significant other when I couldn't really be truly present with myself. So my whole life, it was more like I was watching a movie and not really experiencing it.
Wow, I can relate with that a little bit. Do you feel lonely?
Not anymore.
Mm.
I'm surrounded by so many people right now that it's hard to feel lonely. I think there's those moments where I go inside my head, and it takes a while to get over like a lifetime of an experiencing it in a certain way. So those thoughts do just pop into your mind, like just being in a van, like at the end of the night alone or something. You have that like cognitive recognition. It kind of just floats up into your mind that you're alone again, because that's what your body's been trained to feel. But the truth of the matter is, right now I'm not alone at all. And I don't feel that way. It's just more of a pattern that just will take some time to break. And that's just a natural way of things for any of us, right?
So right now we're surrounded by a ton of people. Like, we are absolutely immersed in community. I mean, literally, but also in the last couple of days and weeks. Has this been your experience the whole time living in a van for a year? Or is it more just recently that you've been very immersed in community?
Well, like I said, with regards to like the story leading into painting a van, I lived in a van for a year, almost a year, and I was just white. I was alone that whole year. I didn't have community. My brother got me into rock climbing August of, I don't even know what year, but 2 years ago, August of 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he had lived in a van for about 3.5 years at the time, and I saw his pictures on Facebook. It looked super cool. I remember when I was even in college in like 2004ish, or I mean, maybe it's not that long ago. I'm not that old. It was like 2010. I saw 60 Minutes with Alex Honnold. He's this rock climber that lived in a van.
Yeah.
It looked super comfy. You know, you live in a dorm room like in college. You're sharing a space with a person, and it's tiny.
Yeah.
My first room out of college was $450 a month for rent in Boston. It was like a closet too. So the space wasn't the hard part for me to wrap my mind around for like a van. It was so just having that, like seeing that image with my brother and the climber and then getting into climbing. I was driving a Lexus IS 250 at the time. I went on a camping trip the next week, and I pitched a 4-person tent, and it sucked. It's like flying away. I got it done. I was next to a river in California.
Right.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was quiet. No bears attacked, fortunately. And then I drove to Yosemite. I'm like, fuck. Like, I got there late because it was a holiday weekend, and I ended up going into the park, which was a big mistake. I got stuck there for like I just pulled over and went on some hikes at a point. But then getting out was a nightmare too, because don't ever drive into that park if you could avoid. Just hike it the 13 miles in from the top.
Okay,
and
good.
you're set. So I drove up that night above the ridge, and I saw these people camping at trailheads. I'm like, damn, I can't pitch a tent here. I'm just gonna sleep in the car. It was fucking uncomfortable. Like, so I was just like, I don't know about this camping thing. I tried it, but it was fun. But the car, this Lexus is like supposed to be a luxury car, but it's super uncomfortable right now. So about a few weeks later, my brother invites me and a buddy out on a camping trip, and my Lexus is just packed to the brim. Like, it's like literally every square inch except the ones covered by us was like packed with things, because there's not that much space. It's more for the looks and the speed and than the actual luxury. So we go out there, we meet with all these climbers, we go 5 minutes off these dirt roads. I'd never taken this car off a dirt road, and everybody's got Subarus, and like some guy sticks his head and he's like, so how does this thing work? how are you guys making this work? Like, I'm confused. And I'm driving away after this weekend long trip. In fact, on that same weekend, while we were camping outside, I saw this big red like streak, like fireball through the sky in the desert. It was a cool. I've never seen one since. It was like a sign, like, this is the end of this life. You're gonna start something new.
Whoa!
You see this big red ball just break up. You hear this huge pop, and you see these pieces shatter.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was really cool. We traced it for at least like 15 seconds across the sky, me and my buddy Raptor.
Wow.
But it was now you see one on the top of my van, actually. In the hood there's like a red comet for a reason.
It's because it signified something new.
It signifies something new. Yeah. So after our weekend driving away, remembering what that guy said about how does this work, and like remembering how it felt in Yosemite sleeping in that car, I was like, I need something new. Maybe one of those Subarus. My brother's like, no, dude. No, get a van, man. Like, get a van. Way more. I'm like, yeah, I could go glamping every weekend. Hell yeah. Like, I don't need an apartment. I had signed a lease for my apartment, and my apartment lease was ending in October. This was like end of September.
So perfect.
Yeah, it was like really perfect time, because when I had signed the lease, I just finished paying off my student loans. I'd been living with my mom, so I could pay those loans off. I had no personal freedom there, so I just wanted some freedom, and I had been sharing. I didn't know any other way but to get an apartment. I just wanted my own apartment, so I spent a little extra money. But like 6 months in, I was like, damn, I have all this space, and I'm surrounded by all these people. I can't control the noise on the left or the right, that fire alarm that goes off, the cars that drive. People in the city, they just wanted to hear their engines roar. You have no control over any of that. So I thought I was getting freedom with the apartment, but honestly, I was just surrounded by just as many people. Like, maybe I didn't have my mom on top of me, but it definitely wasn't sustainable in terms of the freedom that I was seeking. Like, to be happy and to be joyful and not be feeling any of that negative energy every day. I'm very sensitive to energy, and you can just feel it when you're surrounded by it. It's hard not to feel it, and eventually that kind of consumes you, and so it's not sustainable in my minds. And that was the opportunity to rock climbing, the trip out there, the comet blowing up. That month, my brother started just showing me all these YouTube videos of van lifers, the possibilities. So eventually I saw these sprinters. I'm like, dude, if you found a van that had like all this storage space, like a queen size bed, a stove, a fridge, like I totally do it. Like, why not? Like, my lease is expiring. What do I have to lose? You know, if I don't like it, I could go back to renting an apartment again. But why? They're trying to raise my rent by like $200, and my paycheck didn't even raise by that much. It's like, what kind of people are these people? I don't want to put another dime in their pocket. I fucked up by signing that 14-month lease, but never again. I tried to learn fast, and it probably was the biggest mistake of my life, just because of how much it cost me. Like, it cost me a lot of time and it cost me a lot of money. But
how much were you paying for rent in your own place? A lot?
I'd rather not share.
Okay, totally.
It was a lot.
Okay.
You guys would be like, it's just, you just know it's a lot.
Okay, yeah, no, totally.
It was 3 minutes from my office. See, the thing is, I paid more for an apartment that's 3 minutes from my office because the traffic in the city is so bad. I was working in Orange County, and so for me, I didn't care how much I spent on an apartment. It was more about time.
Right.
So I was always seeking time.
Wow.
But I learned that it was more like, I thought I had the right mindset. Like, I was seeking time, but really I didn't factor in all the factors. I hadn't had the forethought to really think through everything. I thought through some things, because I was like, I think I'm still going to stay at this company for like another year. But then I decided I didn't really like, there was that moment in time where everything changed, and it really was the last election we had, seeing how quickly like a country, like just the world could shift, and we have no control over that. And I realized I had no control at my company, and I had no control over my life. And I'm not a control freak, but at the same time, if I have no control at all, then what freedom do I have?
So do you find that you have control out here then?
If I want to have control, I could take control. I could go wherever I want.
Yeah.
But if I want to let go of control, I could go and follow people and have people be surrounded by beautiful people. So I could find that solitude when I want to, and I could also find that community when I want to. So it's the best of both worlds. That's complete freedom, right?
I have a question for you. I've been dying to ask you this. I'm really curious. I'm curious to see what you think about this. What is it? I guess I've already learned so much about myself since I've met you. And what I mean by that is I'm trying to figure out why I've never met somebody, like I've never met anybody who doesn't dick around more than you. Like, I love how honest and upfront you are. And I'm trying to figure out what it is that, like, I see so many people with, like, walls, or, like, there's, like, not as much honesty. Sorry, I'm not articulating myself well, but I'm just trying to, because I've been wondering how to ask this. I'm trying to figure out why. Like, you've inspired me to be, like, I thought I was honest, and, like, I thought I was, like, yeah, truly honest. But I think I'm coming to learn, with your help, subconsciously, that actually sometimes I'm not as honest as I'd like to be, because I'm conscious about how somebody else is going to react to my comment, or I want to try and please somebody. And I'm just wondering if you can explore this a little bit with me. Like, how on earth did you get to be so honest? And do you see other people that aren't honest?
Oh, I know. I could tell. I see dishonest people all the time. I could see when people aren't being honest with themselves. Because I've seen it in myself, I think. So, like, having a lot of time to reflect and be introspective, I was never heard my whole life. So the only person hearing me was me. And I tried to stay true to certain values and ideals and, like, ethics that I just hold true. Sometimes you get in a corporate world and you have to sacrifice it. That's why, to me, that wasn't a sustainable life. Because it was stealing the true identity of me that I've always wanted to have, but nobody was willing to see. And I think nobody's willing to see it because nobody wants to see the honest truth. People want to hear the lies. They want to hear the reflections back of what they not so much believe about themselves, but they want to be true about themselves, and so it creates this cyclical destructive pattern that brings us down rather than lifting us up, because the only way to lift yourself up in my mind is through honesty and through love. And as a kid getting raised, I even got punished sometimes for telling the truth, because my mom wanted to balance out the scales. So if my brother said something, she'd be more likely to believe it if I hadn't really been grounded for a while. So some of the law, I learned at a young age life wasn't fair. But I also learned that seeing the destructive pattern that people fall into, I didn't want to fall into it myself, because I slipped into it many times. Like, I'm a human being. We all are. I've lied. I've not always been honest, because you're in situations sometimes where if you tell the truth, you get in more trouble. Like, I've gotten in more trouble many times for telling the truth.
Me too. Yeah.
So
me
I've
too.
been so you're almost trained in a sense to lie. So I have slipped into the pattern many times, but one lie turns into many. It's just it's like an addiction. You step into an addiction. You try a drug for the first time, and you're hooked. It's just like, oh, just one more time. It's just not a big deal. It's not a big deal, but it is. It really is. Like, when you're lying and you're not honest, then other people around you don't feel comfortable to be that way either. But if you decide one day, I'm going to be 100% honest, I don't really care what people think. I'm not going to take it personally what they think. They might say nasty things. They might say this or that. But I've already been bullied so much in my life that I could take it and I could deflect it. For me, that deflection, I've found a powerful source with writing and with poetry. And I think now more than ever, I'm able to be 100% honest, because I don't have to respond in kind with the dishonesty sometimes people want to share, because they're dealing with some stress or like pain in their life, and they don't know how to get it out, because they don't have anybody that they think will listen to them when they want to share that honest truth. So instead, it comes out with these passive aggressive bursts of anger. I've seen it many times, and now I just turn my shoulder, I turn a blind eye, and I just go right. If anybody has an outlet that they could use, that's the way for me to do it. And I think for others too, everybody has this honest expression, whether it's through painting, through music, through their voice, through poetry like me, or building something, punching a bag. I don't know, you name it. It could be just about anything, an outlet. It could be exercise, it could be swimming, it could be running.
Totally anything, yeah.
It could be anything, but rather than responding in kind and letting somebody's lies consume you so you reflect lies back, you could go and use an outlet that's true to you.
Yeah, and like something that's coming up for me right now as I'm listening to all this is, for example, like I've caught myself, like I believe people come into our life as a reflection, as a mirror. Like may as well be holding up mirrors to each other, because we learn so much about ourselves through others. And I've noticed myself a couple times trying to like rush you, like subconsciously, because I'm used to being on this like kind of fast-paced wheel, or like the way I think people ought to be operating, because I've been marinated in that, right? Like that's not like my truest form. But I've noticed myself kind of like, and I'm just like being super vulnerable with you right now, like rush you a couple times.
I think it's awesome.
And it's been so neat to like quickly learn. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's so fucking cool to see you show up as you, because you are in no damn rush. No damn rush. And so when you show up as yourself and like you move at your own pace, and when I said, "Are you ready, Neal?" You said, "No, I'm not." Most people would say, "Yes, I'm ready. Hold on." Try and please you, right? They're scrambling around, trying to tie up their shoes, trying to get here. You're like, "Actually, no, I'm not ready. I'm going to go take a moment and I'll be back." And it's just like such an important lesson again, because for me in my journey, I know, and I've really come to learn this trip, that I'm such a peacekeeper. I'm all about keeping peace between people and myself and stuff, and therefore I'm not as authentic to myself and my needs. So I've been working on like voicing, like, listen, like the other day when you were over at the van, I was like, actually, I need to take some time.
Yeah.
I can't talk right now. I'm super burnt out. I need to take some time and eat.
I thought that was cool.
And like that's a new thing I'm working on because, and I'm kind of learning that from you because that's what you do. You own your shit. That's how I would say it. Like Neal owns his shit, and it's inspiring because I watch other people own their shit even more then. And like just by you being an example, other people start to embody their truest forms, and it's so neat.
I've seen that. Yeah, you lead by example. I mean, you're not trying to prove anything or win a popularity concert. I mean, not concert, competition.
Yeah.
You're just trying to do you and do your best self each and every day. And if that's what you strive to do and others see that, they'll be more like that too. But when people see those mediocre people, like, and those people are trying to create all this drama and bring you down to their mediocrity,
Yeah.
it's really easy to slip into that and let yourself get brought down. But you just gotta you gotta be bigger and better than that, and just know your truth. Like, not let anybody make you question that, because people will, they'll do that all the time. There's always the haters.
Yeah.
And they're the fakers too. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like, remember how I used this word that in my poem when I wrote about you, where I said that you're very misinterpreted and misrepresented? It's interesting to me to be watching the way other people interact with you, and I think that like so many people learn so much about themselves because you are not afraid to be yourself. And like people are really afraid to be themselves, and it's just like I don't know how to explain it, man. It's just every time I look at you and you're just yourself, I watch other people be like, holy shit, I want to be more myself. And I don't know if it's because you're not afraid of like being hated or something. I don't know what, like, I think it's fear that holds a lot of us back.
It's fear.
And I guess now I'm learning from you that like you've already had a lot of bullying, a lot of negativity, so it's almost like you're, I don't want to use the word immune to it, but it's almost like you're not afraid of that shit anymore.
Yeah, fear got broken. It wasn't like too long ago. I mean, my whole life I was living in fear because I got bullied, I got beat up, I got beat down. I drowned my brain in books and schoolwork. And I don't know if it was the best outlet, but it was an outlet for me. Mm-hmm. I would read those Harry Potter books like so many times. Mm-hmm. And that was like the one time I felt like that, I felt that book connected to me, because for 11 years, this kid grows up in a cupboard as the outsider, where nobody's listening to him. And so I felt really, I feel like a lot of people connected with that book for similar reasons. So I got lost in books like that and my schoolwork. And it was really a fear-based response. That was fear. In college, I got bullied just as much, but I still started to be myself more in college, because there were some people that appreciate my awkwardness. Other people would say, "Oh, this kid's like stupid. He's retarded. He's an idiot. Like, he's weird." Because I mean, I am. I'm not an idiot, but I am weird. The people that get to know me know I'm not an idiot, and that's really all that matters to me, because that's the truth. So now I've kind of learned all these things that used to trigger me, but they were just people implanting false lies into my head. That's the lying part, right? So to be honest, I had to break down the fears of what I had been programmed to believe my whole life. And when I quit my job in July, it was like the last fear. Well, I'm going into the unknown. I'm letting go of basically 29 years building up, doing all this schoolwork, using this outlet, my work even the last 4 years, and using this as an outlet. But now I'm stepping into the unknown, and I'm let going I'm letting go of fear because I don't know what the next day has in store. And it was a weird feeling to quit. That's why I did a magazine with my brother. I wanted to have an outlet, but I still don't let go of fear. Like, I was working with somebody, and I was working with somebody else that had that same type of negativity. My brother brought on this really negative guy, and so I really had not escaped it completely. I did a magazine, and then I ended up going on this trip for it always happens on the solo, like completely solo trips. I went on a trip for 5 days into Washington through Mount St. Helens and the Columbia River Gorge. I ended up at this waterfall. I got in like a preheated argument with my brother, decided I was going to quit the magazine. I ended up at this waterfall, and I met this guy. It was like, literally, it's just the end of the day. I saw this waterfall sign. I'm like, this is what I need right now. This is peace. I got so frustrated it's the most frustrated I've been. I haven't been frustrated really since that moment. I had like lost it. I had to pull over on the side of the road and just stop because I was so angry. I was like, why am I so angry? I just need, like, it was the first time I had connection in 5 days. I had been at peace, and then I became angry. But I don't think I was completely at peace. I think it was the same thing. I was just doing what people wanted. I was working on a magazine because my brother wanted me to work on it. I had done one issue, and it was my own thing, but I wasn't passionate about doing a second issue. So it was fear. It was fear of the unknown again. And I had that conversation, like that call with him after I just needed space. I took the time to myself because I needed the time to myself to think. And I didn't expect first thing to come back to the world and have a conversation with my brother and not go well. Like, I had cool things to share with him, and it just wasn't received in the way I had hoped. And it also kind of opened my eyes to what I had been hiding from, which was that I need to be on my own. Like, I actually need to be on my own. I haven't been on my own, like, path my whole life. I've been just that observer watching that movie. And in this case, I was watching my brother's movie, but I wasn't experiencing my own. And so I ended up seeing this waterfall sign. I pull off, and I was back off the grid for again. And I walked and hiked to this end of this waterfall with this book, 365 days to raise your energy. Somebody had given it to me at my first van meetup, which was Descend on Bends. And that was about a month early, maybe like 3 weeks earlier. So I pulled that book out, walked to the waterfall, and met this guy. He had his whole family and was curious about what I was reading. So he walked up and he just started asking questions, kind of like you are now. And at the end, I told him basically it was the first time I had to talk to somebody after that phone call, and I said I decided to quit this magazine. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what the future has in store for me, but I just know this isn't it. I just learned that today, and it's hard because he's family and we have a good relationship, but I feel like I'm letting him down a little bit, but I just know it's not the right thing for me. And he told me how he was a really religious man, but he was just sharing the gospel in a way where he wasn't preaching, he was sharing his life story. It was really beautiful. So it was a great back and forth, and it touched me. He had changed jobs like 5 times, and he basically said we started as dust and ended as dust. And what happens in between is just it's just part of the journey, and really that to make each and every day special. You don't know where you're going to end up, but if you're treating life for the experience, then you're not going to want to repeat those same experiences each and every day. You're going to want to do something new. So it was just like, man, yeah, you have to fly off on your own, dude. And I got back to service. My brother and I had a great exchange. Like, he gave me this piece of obsidian, which takes away all negative energy. And then I just went off on my own for a couple months. I'm like, I'm gonna go climb a bunch. I had climbed right before all this stuff happened. I went on my first multi-pitch 300-foot climb.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of put me on this level of awakening. I felt so connected with the earth and so connected with the planet in a way I had never been before. I'd never climbed just straight up rock 300 feet, and it changed my world. And so all I wanted to do after quitting the magazine was go climb. So I did that for a couple months until I dislocated my shoulder, unfortunately, climbing. And it was out for 7 hours. it was the most painful experience in my life. So basically I went from working, having that as outlet, to then doing rock climbing. But maybe I was facing my fears by climbing on the rock, but I wasn't completely experiencing life. Rock climbing, as much as I love it, being injured a bunch the last 8 months and dealing with a lot of pain, I realized that there's more to life than just climbing rocks. It's just, that's an escape from actual life. It's really beautiful escape.
Interesting.
And it's such a meditative art and sport, but at the same time, when you're just doing that every day, you're not living completely. You're living partially. To me, it was just, I'm running away from things. I'm running away from the identity, because I don't have one right now. I quit my job, the one I had formed for 29 years that people saw, but it wasn't an identity. It was just that imprint, that reflection. So doing all the rock climbing and doing that every day, at some point things break, and that's when my shoulder fucking dislocated, because it's not, you get injured in life, like that's just part of life, and it's how you bounce back from those injuries and the outlets you find. And so when I dislocated my shoulder, I was up on a mountain, this rock broke out from under my right foot, and my left arm was kind of rotated at a weird angle up, and I just hear this pop. It was this big flash, and I'm sure I yelled from everybody on that mountain probably heard me. It's the most painful like moment in time I've ever experienced. Physical pain, mental pain. It just shattered my mind. It was like, it just this big flash, and fortunately I wasn't on lead. I just took the rope stretch. My belayer partner lowered me. I was with two other people, two other friends as well. They went on YouTube and tried to pop it back in. Ew. That hurt. At first I was like on an uneven rock. We got to kind of level with the surface, but it's super steep. It was about a 600 foot quarter mile like climb to this rock climbing spot, so it's pretty steep. But they laid me down. They tried to watch YouTube. After like 2.5 hours of baking in the sun,
holy crap.
like I'm just like, dude, we guys, we need to go to the fucking hospital. Like, I was telling stories, and basically I realized with the physical pain, the only way to get my mind off the pain, it would kind of go in cycles, with stories. And sharing those stories would take my mind off the pain. Like, whether it be a friend sharing a story, or saying just like a simple quote, or me telling them a story. It was the only thing that was saving my mind.
Crazy.
So we finally go we get down, hike. They put my shoulder in a
sling.
Well, it was my flannel shirt. They just made a fake sling, and we hiked down, and my friend was guiding me. My other buddy got my van, and my friend Linda, she drives us 40 minutes over dirt roads until we get to the hospital. And then the hospital waiting room was filled. I'm still in my harness. Like, we're in there with this fake sling, and like the room's packed. I'm like, oh my god, like, no way, this is not happening. I just was like, I thought it was like going to salvation, and it turned out to be like more of a nightmare than anything, because I was still in a lot of pain. Like, the pain didn't go away. It doesn't go away until the shoulder's back in. And this guy pops out of his chair, and he's like, give me $20 and I'll pop that back in for you. I'm
no
like,
way. My
friends already tried that. We go to the nurse at the front, and she's like, so how much pain are you in? My friend's like, Linda, she looks over, she's like, if you want to be seen quickly, now's the time to show them how much pain you're in. So I'm like, oh my god, like, my arm's gonna fall off. My mind went to the worst place during this injury. Like, I literally was like, I don't know what's going on. They're saying it's dislocated, but I have no fucking clue, because I don't know. But it just went to a very dark place. That's where I just tried to prepare myself for the worst. And like, literally, I was like, man, my arm's gonna fall off. I was like this crazy person. They thought I hit my head, but I was trying to tell them this is just me.
Yeah.
They didn't believe me. They put me through a CAT scan. But I ended up, after a CAT scan, since I didn't hit my head, they sat me literally in the hallway for another 2 hours on no pain meds.
Oh my god.
They weren't going to let me take pain meds before they sedated me to put the shoulder back in. So, but I didn't really notice at the time. Nobody was communicating to me. I was all alone.
Yeah.
It was like at that moment where I realized, man, I had all these companions before that were. I felt better outside the hospital on the mountain around my friends than in the hospital with nobody I knew. It started to teach me about the value of community and companionships. Those people didn't live in vans, but they were a community local to that area. I had been climbing out a bunch, and so it felt like the first time I had people that cared about me outside my family, which sometimes a family feels a little bit superficial. At least it had. It had for a large part of my life because I wasn't heard. It's kind of like that train that you're meant to see, but if you're not honest, then it's not true. And so eventually it got the shoulder back in, but I think that started me. That's when after that I started writing.
Right.
Not a lot, but it's what started me on a journey to writing, and it's also what started me on a journey to community. It was a life shattering moment to pain.
So do you feel, so we have been talking about, we got to wrap up sort of soon here, but I just have a couple more questions. You're saying that you kind of related to Harry Potter in terms of like being in a closet, not being seen, not being heard, you know, not being seen and heard, which is what every human desires. Do you feel like you are seen and heard now? That's what I want to know.
I do. And it happened. It happened just because of the journey I've been on and what's led me here today. I mean, with me speaking with you. I definitely don't feel alone. I definitely feel hurt. It was like in a moment of pain where I hurt this shoulder. Even after quitting my job, I wrote a magazine. I saw with social media some people were hearing me. That actually did boost my confidence a little bit. I saw like, well, some people are hearing me, and then I'm like around some fires. Some people think I'm funny. Like it's just these local people. I hadn't been to any van meetup since Descent on Ben. Some people thought it was like I connected with some people in Descent, but not on the same level I'm connecting now. Because it had to take that life shattering moment, that pain that I had never experienced before to break all my patterns. It was just an instant like it took me out of my mind, and it restarted it, and it was like these people around me, they're hearing what I need, they're taking care of me. After my injury, the next day, this guy came and picked me up that bolts all the routes, and he took me on hiking. Like he felt me. He felt me. He didn't have to even hear me. It was the first time somebody felt my pain. Like they all felt my pain the day before. They were in my head for a whole day. They had to deal with that emotional pain I had to deal with. So it was the first time in life I've really felt like people felt me, and they heard me. And in about a month after that injury, I went to the RTR, the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous. My brother told me about this thing. I was like, oh, cool. Another van meetup like Descent on Ben. But I went there and honestly met nobody the first 2 days.
Yeah.
I parked way in the outskirts, and it was just old people. It wasn't my age group. Like, and I mean, age is just a number, but it was just people living on RVs. And I was just like, this isn't what I came to this event for. Like, I was hoping to meet people and maybe change my world. I don't know. Because, like, I had this injury. I'm looking for a community.
Yeah.
I was actually, like, searching for something by going there. But then on day 3, my friend Sam, like I find out she's coming. So I'm like, oh, I gotta go find a cool spot now. I gotta go move my van. So I literally walk all around this whole event, and then I stumble upon this little, I called it Adventure Island. I stumbled upon it, and I'm like, man, how do I get back here? So I literally backtracked. I just walked backwards towards my van about a quarter mile and then drove my van there. But everybody had trouble finding this spot. Like literally it was blocked in by RVs, and it was like this big inlet. But by the end of it, we ended up having 40 vans. I built a fire pit with one arm.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we were all gathered around my buddy. So basically, after Sam came, she's connected. She got 3 more people to come. We had 5.
Yeah.
And then across the ravine that was there, that's why we called it Island.
Yeah.
My friend Steve, they walked over that night, and we just had a buddy heater. But I'm like, fuck, we could do. I had a fire in the desert with these locals. We could do way better. So the next day, I bring out my trowel, I stick it like in the ground, and I start like digging this little hole. And then one by one with one arm, because I still recover. I had just started my physiotherapy part of my shoulder recovery, and I'm Like, well, this guy out in the desert told me when he hurt his leg, the one that took me out, like, hiking the next day and to the hot springs and really took care of me.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I just started moving rocks. I built all the trails here. I'm like, okay, so moving rocks.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he inspired me. And so I started moving one rock at a time, building this fire pit. And by that night, we had 10 vans and we had firewood. We didn't have firewood when I started building the fire pit.
Oh my God.
And then, yeah, it just started growing organically. We had like a banjo player one night that just showed up at the fire pit. We had this guy, Wizard Fred. He brought some really crazy music and a wizard costume. We had charades one night. We had like capture a flag. It was so communal. We had a potluck, and none of it was beforehand. Nothing was planned. There's no plan at all. It's just people. Some people started seeing this on social, like their Instagram, and they just want to be a part of it. So like it grew even more. And it was it was, at the time, it was the coolest experience of my life. It was the most connected I felt with people. I still felt like that outsider, though, because I was breaking down what I had been trained to see my whole life still. It was cool, though, because I was watching things differently. Like, I was still watching a movie screen, but I was watching other people's movie screen. Like, I could sit in my van, there's a fire pit, and I have a big screen TV, and I'm just like, I saw the smiles on people's faces, and to me, it was just such a joy to see that much joy on people's faces. And like, I had been building this fire pit and just doing my own thing the whole time. I was doing physical therapy. Like, I had these bands and I'm going like this, like every day. I was just focused on me. I was focused on recovery, really. The fire pit was just part of it, and I thought it would make things nicer for, like, rather than have my personal space taken with buddy heater, they could go sit at a fire and I could go watch it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was also reading the book The Alchemist at the time, so I wasn't actually like socializing too much. I was just there. Like, people felt my presence. There was one night at the fire pit I did dad jokes, but like, other than that, I was more like, I was a big observer at that event, and I was just like seeing it for the first time, seeing people interact for the first time with a new lens. Like, it was the first time I had I had a new lens, not the one I had been trained to see my whole life, because the shoulder thing just
shattered it.
It shattered it.
Wow.
And I actually got an infection at that. Like, I got bit by a black widow, and my finger got infected. And people were actually concerned about me. Like, I had to go to urgent care, get antibiotics. People were concerned. Wow. And I came back, like, this infection ended up plaguing me for like all of winter. But I stepped away for like a month. I went to my dad's and camped next to his garage in my van. They want me to stay inside, but I'm like, nah, I'm gonna stay in the van.
Namaste in the van. Yeah.
But I didn't want to share with anybody. I didn't want people to worry for me, because I don't want people to have to feel my pain. I just wanted to deal with it because I knew I could deal with it. When I was ready to share my best self, I could share my best self. It wasn't lying to anybody. It was just like not inflicting that pain on other people, because I knew I could deal with it on my own. And so when I did get better from the infection, I shared with people, and then people were like, oh man, your hand, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good.
They genuinely cared, yeah.
I'm great. But after the shoulder injury, I just, like, nothing could be as painful as that moment. Like, things could be painful, but that moment was more painful than anything I think I'll ever experience again. I don't know, maybe my arm will get cut off, like, shit happens, but up to now, it was just like nothing I've ever experienced before. Everybody's pain is relative, so each person has their own relative experiences, and there will be that moment. It just when that moment happens, not letting it bring you down, but helping it, like, letting it help you rebuild. You could go in two directions, right? You could go in a downward spiral, or you could start flying. So it takes a little while. You're in like a cocoon, like a butterfly, but if you just wait there and you allow time to heal yourself, eventually you break out and you fly. And so recently at the Teton Gathering, I read I had just started writing a little bit of poetry after a shoulder injury. I was writing before that, but more storytelling, some kind of poetic things, but nothing on the level that I'm writing now. So I hung out with Matt and Amanda, who hosted the Teton Gathering in Moab. Amanda was actually not there. It was mostly Matt. But I was with them when they were talking about the open mic night, because Amanda came for a couple of days after her trip back home. And so I saw them for like 2 days, and we talked about the open mic night. they were just thinking of that idea. I'm like, well, I'll do it. If nobody else does, I'll do something for you. At the time, I was only jokes because I just wanted to bring smiles to me. Like, if I can make people smile, then they're able to be present. If people are laughing, they're in the moment. And so for me, it was always just about jokes. My dad gave me this dad joke book, but I've kind of run a course on the jokes in the book, so I had to move on to something new.
Yeah.
And at the Teton gathering, Kathleen heard I had poetry. She's in charge of one of the people in charge of VanLife Diaries, and she kept walking by my van like, hey, I'm excited for that poetry. I'm excited for that poetry. I never heard anybody say I'm excited for your poetry. So I'm like, well, now I have to do this poetry. And I went up there. I curated 4 of my best poems, and I went up there and told the story of how I ended up in van life through poetry.
Yeah.
And people, and I brought up music because to me, music's a metronome of sorts. I write out loud, and I write to this deep house music that has like no beat. It just helps me. It helps me dim out all the distractions that are outside and focus in more. Sometimes I'll light an incense, whatever will like enhance and heighten my senses.
Totally.
Will help me write better. So at the VanLife gathering, the Tetons, I brought up the speaker, and everybody was like confused, like, what's he doing? Like, he's walking out with this music. Like, it was really unprepared.
Yeah.
And I had to put an act name down for my open mic night, so I just put your guess is as good as mine. And there was a lot of people that thought I was going to do jokes, but then I went up there and I read all this poetry, and people were blown away. Like, I actually saw people's genuine reactions, and I felt so in the moment. It felt so right. It was the first time where I've done something where artistic, like an artistic expression, where I've just felt the world around me stop.
Yeah.
And it was because of that poetry, and because of the way I felt everybody connect with it. Like, all their energy was just drawn to those words that were coming out of my mouth. It was beautiful. And so since then I've been writing almost every day. I've been just writing and writing. I've been so inspired because people gave me such a good reception. And that's the thing, when you tell people truths about themselves that are like good truths, and you keep affirming those truths, like, they'll start to believe them in themselves. That's how you break down those walls. Like, somebody does something, or somebody just wakes up in the morning, you have such a great fucking smile, like, it's beautiful. Like, it already helped me get my day started. Like, just hearing that people are going to smile more, right? Like, they're going to want to smile. I was always afraid of my smile, and now people tell me I have a great smile, so I'm smiling more.
That's such a good point. It's like positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
It's the same with the poetry. So at this last, I went to another VanLife Diaries. I hurt my wrists this time, so that's the other reason I've been having trouble getting back onto the rocks. Like, I finally got back climbing, and then I hurt my wrist.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Back to the right, but it was just perfect timing because it was after this, and I had, honestly, it taught me that there's more to life than just climbing up rocks. Like, I've always wanted to, my goal in working in the corporate world and moving up the corporate ladder, I worked really hard. I was working 8-hour weeks. The goal was to be able to touch as many people as possible. I'm creating a software that's going to help people, but it wasn't really achieving the goal I'd hoped for. And now I find out that I could do that with my words. I could touch a lot of people with my words. So to me, that's a way better. That's something I'm doing that's completely true and not somebody else's vision. It's mine. So it's just made me want to write more and more, and it's freed my soul. That's how I think, coming back to your question, how I'm so honest. That's really what's led me to the path of being honest. I've been honest in my head my whole life. I've been very analytical and introspective and retrospective and very thoughtful, but that honesty's just been inside my brain. It hasn't been projecting outward, because the things that people project towards you, for the most part in your life, at least in my life, I can't speak for everyone, everybody's different. Some people, they get projections of joy. You see it in kids sometimes. So it's really dependent on the parent, and honestly how that parent was raised. If your parents were raised in an abusive household, that's probably, or like a verbally abusive household, that's probably what's going to come your way. But the way to break that thing is through honesty, taking that projection that people have been projecting onto you and starting to build a force field through some sort of art, whether that art is your body, like bodybuilding, even
Dance.
dance,
Yeah.
bicycling.
Totally.
I know some people are engineers. Some people, everybody has those passions, and
Yeah.
they're not full-time passions because they're stuck working all the time. And when they're working all the time for somebody other than themselves, then they're not completely free, and they're not completely true or honest. And so that's why you see people hiding under those masks, because in order to be able to sustain the life they're in, that's what they have to do, because otherwise it's an unsustainable life. The only sustainable life, to be honest and true, is to escape all that.
Totally. Well, my friend, thank you so much for sharing. I don't know about you, but I'm getting really hot in here.
It's really fucking hot.
It's really hot.
We've been in the van for a while. We're up in the mountains, and it gets hot up here. At some point, though, the thunderclouds will come over and it will rain.
But Neal, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being willing to sit here and be honest and vulnerable with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Episode 20, buddy. This is you.
On the next episode of Humans of VanLife, your guess is as good as mine.
All right, you guys. Hope to see you next week. Tune in on Tuesdays and Thursdays to Humans of VanLife. Bye-bye.